Yo, what's up, YouTube? Back at it again, out here in nature. I wanted to make another quick historical video, but let's get into it. Today, I'm out on the James River at what once was Fort Huger. Fort Huger, for people that don't know, was a Confederate fort constructed on the James River, 60 miles from Richmond, to protect the state capital of Richmond. And I'll show you a little bit of what's left. In the mid 2000s, the county restored and added in some restoration areas, so let me show you a few little things. We're here on the James. Ooh, there's a boat out there. But here's some of the cannons. See some cannonballs there. Excuse all my getup. It's currently raining. Not pouring, but it's raining pretty good out here. A little cold January day. But yeah, Fort Huger was in 1861. Andrew Talcott was the engineer that surveyed and made the plans for this land and this fort, and preparations to basically to fend off the Union from coming up the James River. He surveyed multiple lands. This is in an area that would have been considered, there's multiple names to it, but I'll just call it Hardin's Bluff, in a low wetland right off of the James River. And there's also another fort nearby, Fort Boykin. They were both engineered by Andrew Talcott. Construction started in 1861, but the Confederates were a little bit not great on their timing, you could say. Construction wasn't fully finished until about March of 1862, and even then it was never very fully finished. There's a boat out there. I don't know if I can see it from here. Probably not. A couple boats out there. You might just barely see it through the woods out there. But yeah. And then by May of 1862, the Union came up the James to attack. And as they came, the Confederates did similar to how they did in the capital of Richmond. They destroyed their own fort, bombed the artillery rooms, shelling houses. They did the same with Fort Boykin. And so anyone that was left, or anything that was left, the Union Marines came in and took over, made it home. Well, it's a beautiful area out in the country. You can hear shots going off in the background. People either target shooting or hunting. Oh, here we go. Get a little open area. They got a Virginia flag up there. Oh, Virginia flag, what was that? I think that was made in 1861 or 1862. The Tyrannus flag. Show you some of the cannons. Here we go. Powdered magazine. Directly ahead are the remains of the fort's powdered magazine, constructed of brick. This structure stored the hundreds of pounds of black powder used to charge the cannons before firing. This was the most dangerous place in the fort because an accidental ignition or hit by enemy fire could reproduce disastrous effects. The magazine was destroyed by retreating Confederate troops on May 14th, 15th, or 16th, 1862, which those dates were dates that the Union came in and took the place over, basically. Well, yeah, walking around here, Confederate soldiers would have been living and tending to the fort all around here up until May of 1862. It was named after Benjamin Huger, who was a former American general of the Mexican-American War and then became a Confederate general, which most notable, I'd say, for being in charge of the Department of Norfolk, in charge of artillery, in charge of ammunition, because if you were to ask other generals about him, at least other Confederate generals, they'd probably tell you he was a lackluster general. He was involved in the Battle of Roanoke, which the Confederates lost. Little cannon action. And a lot of people then, Robert E. Lee being one, would accuse him, or not accuse, it's pretty known, of being too slow to send in his infantry. And they like to say that he was the leading cause to lose that battle. He was also involved in the Battle of Seven Pines and the Battle of 7 Days, which both he, similar, too slow with infantry, poor decision making in battle time, leading to losses. Some more cannons over here. It's starting to get cold out here. South Bastion. That little cannon. See the James a little bit. Interesting to think that in the mid-2000s, the county decided to construct all this, because this is all just replicas at the end of the day. The original fort, like I said, the Confederates blew most of it apart. There would have been a shelling house right around here somewhere, a couple other structures. The original cannons would have been lined up like this on the bluff. And yeah. Oh shit, this one's open. Go right up to the cannon. Bang. Little cannon action. Shoot this baby off. I'm gonna stop him. It's just plastic. Fiberglass. Not even metal. Oh, it's a replica. But it is interesting. At least they put something out here, I guess. Fort Huger, when constructed, I'm gonna go back around this little triangle. Shoot, should I just cut through? Cut through the old shelling house? Fuck it. Oh shit, this shit is mud. I wanted to look at this plaque, because that represents another aspect of Fort Huger. Fort Huger was constructed under the guide of the Confederate Engineering Bureau. But, of course, Fort Huger was constructed by black slaves and freed blacks. They have a little plaque here. African Americans at Fort Huger. for how the Confederates hated blacks, supposedly, and their slaves, they sure did use them to construct their infrastructure. The Confederate Army rented slave labor and hired free black laborers to construct the fort. Records of their payment show that these men worked for 50 cents a day. In December 1861, Isle of Wight County Commissioner of the Revenue B.J. Gary sent a letter to Richmond on behalf of the freed black laborers who had not yet been paid for their efforts. He indicted that he would travel to Richmond on their behalf to collect payments if necessary. Interesting. We've got some names here. I'm not quite sure if these names are freedmen or slaves, but I mean, either way, it was in the Confederate South. The whole freed aspect is a little skewed there, so you gotta take it all with a grain of salt. But Levi Willis, Roderick, James Charles, Solomon James, Henry Burrow, Reuben, Ben, Mike, Leonard, Edmund, Abraham, Isaac, John, Alfred, Moses, Henry, Edmund, Thomas Alderman, Henry Briggs, Payne Bailey, W.G. Bailey, George Bailey, William Butler, Mills Butler, Anselm Bowman, John Bowser, Alan Croker, Silas Charity, Beverly Clayton, Ben Crew, Joseph Davis, Henry Galtney, Isaac Green, Gilbert Green, Peter Galtney, Rob Hill Jr., Edgar Holloway, Rob Hill, James Holloway, and Rob Holloway. I guess these were all slaves and freed blacks that constructed Fort Huger. They used their labor, which in the construction, it was a difficult construction from what I have researched. Supposedly, it was all 19th century hand style of construction. They had a very few horses to help with the process. Supposedly, axes and many tools were short in supply. Got a little hole action right here. One can only assume what's going on in there. But yeah, this is Fort Huger, and just wanted to make this video for a little historical video. For anyone out there wondering, I'm planning on doing more historical content, traveling. I'm also working on making music. If you want to check that out, it'll be on my YouTube, and it should be on mostly other streaming platforms, Spotify, SoundCloud, Pandora, things of that nature. But yeah, thank you for watching this quick little historical video of Fort Huger. Peace. Goodbye.